Breaking news, Governor Phil Scott signs an executive order extending the homeless hotel program through June 30th, but only for a smaller population, the most vulnerable people. Paul, do you have our executive order up on the screen there?
I do. Here's the Twitter executive order. He put it out, of course, on social media. He did sign an executive order today. He says, today I sign an executive order to extend eligibility for families with children and medically vulnerable individuals to stay in the hotel-motel program through June 30th. I believe we have a responsibility to protect the most vulnerable. While I've been opposed to the hotel-motel program because it doesn't serve those in the program well, I have also been clear that we have an obligation to protect children and those who are most vulnerable. So, yeah, what do you think?
So what we have here is the latest effort in a big tug of war in the Vermont legislature and the governor over the homeless hotel program. Every year in the legislative session, something sucks all the oxygen out of the room. This year, it's the Budget Adjustment Act. This year's budget, will they tweak that budget and extend the homeless hotel program past April 1 to June 30, to the end of the fiscal year? And it's been this humongous back and forth. And there were some votes on it today that were if there had been a governor's veto, which he's already vetoed it once over this, would have possibly led to another veto. So really the governor is leading by compromise here. And there's a very interesting point that he just made in that about, yes, it's for the most vulnerable people, but there are real problems with the homeless hotel program from a humanitarian point of view, and they were sketched out by Jenny Samuelson, the Agency of Human Services Secretary. Can you roll that, Paul?
Sure.
The truth is stark. Since the program was diverted from an emergency shelter model to its current iteration, and through the end of 2024, as the governor said, 135 people have died in the program. Of those deaths, 45 were due to poisonings, primarily overdoses. 2 died from homicide, and many others succumbed to health conditions that may have been preventable if provided with appropriate care. In 2024 alone, 29 lives were lost. Not included in these numbers yet, over a 2-week period in 2025, 3 people died. These numbers are not just statistics. They're a painful reminder that the program is failing to protect the people it was intended to serve.
So what we have here is a program that does one thing, you might say, very well. It keeps people from sleeping under bridges. It gives people a roof over their heads. The state of Vermont has what's called a housing first policy, which is whatever you do, make sure someone has a place to stay. But the problem here, and this is being pointed out more and more by the administration, that these homeless hotels are also centers for not only drug using, but drug dealing, overdoses, and human trafficking. So, and also human trafficking and all these things with a mom and her young kids living in apartment 30, and next door you have the major drug dealer. So you have a really toxic mess. On the other hand, though, as the housing homeless hotel advocates will say, it's what are the alternatives? So if you've got comments, if you have thoughts about this sort of latest foray in the homeless hotel program, which it seems like it started with COVID, Paul, and it just seems like it's just not going away.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you know, both you and I were at the press conference on Wednesday, and I was there kind of listening in. I hadn't been to one yet this year. I thought you asked a really kind of I thought it was an interesting question. It had to do with Brenda Siegel. You said, like, I can already hear, Brenda Siegel saying.
Now, who's Brenda Siegel?
Brenda Siegel's I mean, I would call her an activist, absolutely, for homeless people and, really opioid and drug addicted people. I mean, if you know her story, she's pretty passionate about what she does. And I mean, you and I have talked about it before. We may not always agree with what Brenda says or what her maybe initiatives might be, or maybe we agree with the goal she's trying to solve, right? But she's definitely been knocking on the governor's door for this issue for years now.
That's right.
And I know you had a couple conversations with her this week. Did you guys talk about any of this? Or?
Sure. I said, the governor's people said, there's no use putting a patch on a gaping wound. In other words, this little homeless hotel program with this gigantic housing and drug addiction problem that we have in the state. And she said, well, if the alternative is nothing, then even a little patch is preferable. So the state has a lot of sort of long-term solutions, and to their credit, they're also ramping up their family shelter programs. They're expanding them, they're extending them. So if this has done anything, the state has sort of grappled with this. Well, if we don't want the homeless hotels, and boy, do we not want the homeless hotels, what else we got? And well, what we've seen here is families with children and severely ill, disabled people will still have access to this. But the other folks who are sort of in the middle of that, not so much. There'll be more of a cap on it.
It seems to me that these are like the two big things for Phil Scott this year. It's the education fund and system and education finance and how that works. And I know we're going to get more into that later. But man, has he really been drilling this issue home specifically? And I think it's obvious why. It's one really obvious example where the state could cut spending. And we need to, because this program has been, as you say, it's been here since COVID. I mean,
right.
And it was never intended to be this permanent thing for people that were in crappy situations. I think Rob Roper did a pretty nice piece this week on kind of explaining a little bit about who's really is it the guy that's down on his luck in Vermont, or is this program maybe attracting people from out of state? Is there more to this?
What did he conclude?
I think he concluded that there were some people coming from out of state, and that the program is being abused within, and that people. I mean, I've seen this before too. Even last year when I was doing some of my reporting up in Burlington, when we first were kind of getting our nose into Burlington City Council, which more on that too later maybe.
Yes.
But I would interview those folks on the street, and some of the people that were either in the program or they've been in and out of it, or they're using one of the organizations up that way, and I mean, they would blatantly tell you, like, we're better off here than we are a lot of other places. We might as well just come right here. So Roper's piece, though, if you get a chance, I would say go check it out,
Sure.
folks.
I know anecdotally a couple things. Even in my own family, there have been family members who have left the state that they were in and came to Vermont and brought people who are not from Vermont with them to stay in some of Vermont's, actually in a couple of Vermont's homeless hotels in the Northeast Kingdom. So that does happen. It's only a question of how much. And there's another person I know who is actually a paying resident in what is, generally speaking, a homeless hotel. And the owner there says 40% of the folks who are staying there in the homeless hotel program are from out of state. So that's anecdotal information. But it's this whole idea that we're just helping out our down on luck Vermonters.
Yeah. Well, and this is probably totally unrelated, but a little birdie just kind of brought this thought to my head. Maybe that hotel motel, I mean, remember the whole situation up on the border a couple weeks back? I mean, do we know if that motel was potentially, the Border Patrol agent shooting?
Right.
Were those folks in a place that was one of these hotel motel things?
I think not.
You,
I
you
think-
guys know the answer to that? They were not. Okay, I was just curious.
No, it's a
That's
good question,
something I
though.
kind of was thinking of, just as an example as to what kind of place we're talking about, you know.
Yeah.
I do have a comment here from, can't say his name on the air. His name is Kitty Trigger. Let's just put it that way. He says, this decision by Scott is crap. Hi, Paul. Hi. We can house the vulnerable without housing freeloaders! Exclamation point. How many were rescued with Narcan more than once? Question mark. The alternative is taking responsibility. We have evidence of out-of-state abuse. Florida man moved to Vermont. Hey, Florida man moved to Vermont. If you have more information on that, send it my way. That would be a good example as like, hey, like some of us are like trying to escape Vermont. You know, it's so expensive. I can't afford to live here. All these homeless people keep moving here. I'm sorry, I just can't help it.
Well, you can certainly afford to live here if you're staying somewhere free.
Exactly.
Right.
So I think with that guy, that might be a good opportunity to go to our first ad for
Sure.
today. And today's episode is brought to you by Procter Gas. Are you a homeowner wishing to convert your home to propane gas so that you can enjoy energy efficiency and off-grid living? Alternatively, you may be a contractor seeking propane and line installation related services for your clients. Either way, Procter Gas is here to help. They provide comprehensive services in a variety of products from leading brands in Rutland, Vermont, and beyond. So Procter Gas, and that's Judy Taranovich, who's a big supporter of ours. Can't thank her enough. We loved seeing her a couple weeks ago in the State House, and we're glad to be there and monitoring things and what's going on so that she knows, and we hope that you're out there watching today. So just wanted to say hello. But Guy has
Yes.
changed his hat. What is going on, Guy? What are you doing over there?
This is my Maha hat.
Oh, okay.
My Make America Healthy hat. And the reason I have this is, and also I decided, you know what, Paul? It's 5 o'clock somewhere, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's Friday, and it's time, frankly, it's time for a drink. And this is a Switchback non-alcoholic. They were giving these away at the State House today. Can you imagine? The Vermont Brewers Association, there are at least 4 Vermont brewers that are making non-alcoholic beers now, which for me is awesome because when I was 26, I had an alcoholic roommate, did some stories for the St. Albans Messenger on alcoholism, and I decided at that point, you know, the beer I was having when I was coming home at the end of the day, how much do I need this? And if any little part of me says, I need this, maybe I should not drink it. So I have not had a beer proper, an alcoholic beer, since I was 26, about 40 years. But I love the taste, and non-alcoholic beer is my beverage of choice. Well, the occasional glass of wine too. But anyway, it's my beer of choice. And this is Switchback, only 70 calories. And I guess the reason, the connection between the Switchback and the hat is I was listening to, hold on.
Thank you. That was driving me crazy, Guy. I was like, that thing's going to spill all over the place.
Oh, that's good. It's even got a head and everything. So I was listening to RFK today, and he was talking to some group in West Virginia, which of course West Virginians are famous for their health ethic. No, they're not.
No.
But
anyway, they've had a rough go in that state. I believe.
They're getting the message, and he said, RFK said, if you love this country, you have to take care of yourself. We can't make America great again if everyone is sick. We have to own our own health. You know, if we're going to be, Paul, if you and I are going to keep doing this worthwhile mission, we got to be healthy.
Yeah.
We have to have clear minds. And Tim, you need to be able to, my son Tim, who by the way is the power behind the throne, who does most of the real work in the Chronicle.
Does the heavy lifting
And
for sure.
he's fighting his health battles, and one reason why is so he can keep doing what he's doing.
That's right.
And so we have to, and they say alcohol, They say drug abuse is a victimless crime. That is the biggest load of crap in the world, because you look at what drug addiction does or alcoholism does to a family. No victims, seriously?
I don't know how they could say that.
Yeah, that's crazy. Now I'm not trying to tell anyone what to do with their lives, but I am saying more and more, I've lost about 22 pounds since I stopped eating just basically added sugar and high starch foods. That's really all I've done. But it's really brought to mind that our system, our healthcare system, sees you're sick and sells you an expensive pill. Well, how about we just eat right and exercise a little bit? You'll feel great, you'll live longer, you'll be more useful, your family will love you for it.
That's right.
Why not?
Yeah, you'll be happier.
Oh, there's that.
Which I think for a lot of folks, I don't think the main goal in life for all of us is to be happy. I can't say that that's my main goal, right? But while I'm seeking that goal, I hope that I have a clear mind and I'm happy and I'm thinking good thoughts and I'm thinking accurately. I think it's this point you're talking about, Guy, and I'm glad we're just taking a moment to talk about it today. And I hope folks out there that are watching this, we have a whole bunch of stuff in the legislature that we're kind of covering, and it's been a crazy time for us the past few weeks. I'm sure if you've been watching, you've been following, you probably know. But I do think it's a good opportunity to take a moment here and just talk about health and, really how a lot of our health choices do come down to addiction, right? Like I just was having a conversation with somebody yesterday whose name I won't mention because I don't want to expose him, but he's a good friend and he's a supporter of the Chronicle. Mm-hmm. And he was telling me that yesterday was the first time he had drank coffee in, I think, over 6 months or like a year, something pretty substantial. And he was like, it's been a crazy, and they had free coffee and pastries, and
that place is
I know,
awful.
It's corrupting.
Although I have not had first time since I've been going to the State House in a million years, I have not touched the free pastry this year. I have not touched it.
Good for you, Guy. Yeah. I can't say if I wasn't there yesterday, so I can't say, or during that time anyway, I can't say if I would or would not have, but definitely, I'm 25 years old. I'm still young. I'm healthy, but I'm getting to that age where I'm saying, okay, the choices I make today are going to impact me for a lifetime.
That's for sure.
I think you have a little bit of leeway when you're a teenager and into your 20s, but not anymore.
That's
and
right.
I can sense that. And I was telling Guy before the show, in Catholicism we do this kind of it's a tradition every year. It's Lent, where you give something up for 40 days, which is kind of like to symbolize Jesus's fasting in the wilderness. So not that we're fasting in the wilderness, right? But for 40 days, people give up something for Lent. And it was funny, when I was a kid, I always used to give up ice cream. That was like my always go-to. And this, just as a quick side note, I have to tell this story. I just remembered it. When I was a kid, Ben and Jerry's hosted with the Today Show at Sugarbush. They did the Today Show, NBC. Ben and Jerry's were there, and I was offered ice cream from Ben Cohen.
Wow.
And I said no. And I was probably like 10 years old, and I said, nope, it's Lent, I can't do it. But anyway, I gave up alcohol for Lent this year. And, I can't say that I've necessarily had a drinking problem over the years, but I definitely have been known to drink and go to the pub and hang out with my friends. And it's definitely a social thing for me. But as I was saying to Guy before the show, I definitely enjoy that, right? But it's not necessarily my identity or part of my identity. I'm realizing it's more the social aspect I enjoy than anything. It's not necessarily the alcohol. So it's been an interesting time. So I hope folks are out there listening to our conversation, and they understand that Make America Healthy, again, is truly about you and the individual. And with that, I do have a couple comments.
Oh, please.
On that. First of all, Kitty Trigger says check 7 days. So actually, Tim, if you want, would love to if you had a moment, you could check 7 days and see if you can find information on the Florida homeless man that moved to Vermont. And let's see, EJ writes, then please fix the supermarkets. There's so much pot in Vermont, unfortunately. And I think that point you just made about fixing the supermarkets is absolutely a big problem because where we source our food from, it's so hard to make. When you go to if you live in a town like Northfield, for example, where there's one grocery store, and I'm not picking on that grocery store, but they don't have a ton of great options when it comes to non-processed foods and just organic. It can be very challenging, and basically, I bought some barbecue sauce last night, and I looked at the ingredients, and it said no high fructose corn syrup, and then I read the ingredients, and I didn't see anything I didn't like, and I got home and I gave it to my girlfriend, and she inspected it, and of course it says corn syrup, no high fructose corn syrup, but still corn syrup.
Oh, brother.
So, it's
I've heard a certain young entrepreneur is going to be doing something about the Northfield food desert.
I am going to be doing something about that. Yeah, so I guess it's not a bad time to let folks know.
Sure,
I mean,
why
it
not?
totally aligns with what we're talking
Yeah.
about. I am buying, if any of you are familiar with Rob Williams' Yak Cart, Yak It To Me barbecue out of Waitsfield. For years, Rob has...
Yak as in the big furry
yeah,
animals,
Yeah,
yaks?
with horns.
Wow.
Yeah, the humpy and horny animals. That's how Rob always has described that.
Well.
It's true.
Call him as he sees him, I guess.
But we're going to be serving up organic grass-fed yak burgers this summer at my Creamy stand. So expansion on Creamy Cast. Haven't really announced this yet. So if you're hearing this for the first time, I'm not that I'm necessarily not ready to talk about it. I have been talking about it, but there's going to be some details that go along with that we're trying to get squared away. But man, I am so excited for the summer. I'm so excited to see folks there. We're trying to balance out the creamies with something a little bit healthier, and there's going to be more on that too. So
Wow.
yeah,
That's cool, Paul.
it's
I'm coming down, man.
I think we're going to have a little bit of I think there's going to be room for a free speech forum or rally or something like that this summer.
All right.
Which I think could be a lot of fun. So
Right,
keep
right.
that in mind.
Wow.
Wait, I do have a couple more comments here, and I think we do want to continue to,
Sure.
to honor them. Ben Charrett, shout out to Ben Charrett, by the way,
Yes.
who is somebody who did excellent coverage in Waitsfield, who helped take videos of J.D. Vance and the motorcade and all the craziness
Yes.
down in Waitsfield. So we just want to give a huge thank you and kudos to him. He writes, good afternoon, gentlemen. We definitely need reform in our healthcare system. I think that it kind of comes back to the supermarket issue, where many people feel as if these two problems are kind of one and the same. Where you have a healthcare system that's designed to, I'm not going to say trap, but catch people, I guess, in a sticky situation because they've maybe been eating foods, slowly poisoning themselves over a number of years.
So Ben, actually, you help run the Waitsfield IGA, right, or something like that. What's your idea? What you said, healthcare reform. What do you have in mind? We'd be glad to see your comment on that. Paul, you said there was another comment too.
Yes, I have one from Judy Taranovich.
Oh,
She
good.
says, "Hi, gentlemen. I just tuned in. Talking about a healthier lifestyle. Does that mean you're talking about moving from Vermont? LOL. Personally, I am a carbaholic. One carb is too many, and 1,000 is not enough." We appreciate the honesty.
I hear you, Judy. Hey, Judy, while we've got your attention, I don't know if you saw the show last week, but I had on one of our other advertisers' hats. If there's a Procter Gas hat, I would really like it. Okay? I will buy it from you, and I want to wear it on the show. So please, love to know if there's a Procter Gas hat.
We do have another comment, and this is a really important comment. Crystal Corriveau, I'm sorry. Corriveau. I know. I'm not. I did take French, but I didn't really pay that well attention. So she writes, even a healthy lifestyle is no guarantee of good health. We need to figure this out. A good friend of mine had a hysterectomy in Dartmouth, and the cost was $23,000. 6 months later, all her internal stitches tore, and she had emergency surgery in Aruba with a 1-week hospital stay that only cost $9,000. I hear the number one leading cause of bankruptcy in the United States is medical debt.
Wow.
I don't know if you've ever heard that before, but I'm pretty sure
Wow.
that that's true.
That could be. Wow. And of course, some would say the argument for that is, well, we need socialized healthcare, so no one. But the real problem is that we're spending way too much money for many different reasons on our healthcare, and we need to do something about that.
Yeah, and I think it kind of comes, that is the Bernie Sanders argument ultimately, right? Like that's kind of where you're going with that. And I think it's interesting talking about the Maha conversation. It's interesting watching Bernie, we all saw him questioning of RFK Jr. on the stand, and it's just it's so strange to me that here is somebody that's come along and is ready to go after Big Pharma. And Bernie is more or less ripping him apart.
Right.
It's interesting. But actually, on that point, I don't know if anyone remembers, the hearing when Bernie had those pictures of the onesies up, and that said, unvaxxed, unafraid on the onesies for the children. He's, do you support these onesies? Just going on a Bernie raid, right? Those onesies were actually. The website that was on was the Children's Health Defense.
That's right.
.org. And I really think it's important to mention this.
You do that.
And I'm going to pull up the headline so folks can see this. Let's see, it is April, sorry folks, here it is. April 10th. Children's Health Defense President is going to be here in Vermont at the State House. And she's going to be there. Mary Holland's her name. She is attorney and president of Children's Health Defense at the State House on April 10th. She will be in room 10 from 1 to 3 p.m. specifically to address H61 bodily autonomy and healthcare decision-making, including the right to be free and accept or refuse any health or medical intervention, testing, treatment, or vaccine based on the individual's religious, conscientious, or personal beliefs. I think that's a bill. That's probably one of those bills, guys, where we really have no problem saying we support that. I don't know about you, but I don't have an issue saying I support that.
You support
I support the H61 bodily autonomy and healthcare decision making.
Oh, right.
Right. I think that's one of those things where, like as the Chronicle, we're very upfront and open about free speech, Second Amendment, and the freedom of healthcare.
The gist of that is, we passed a constitutional amendment guaranteeing bodily autonomy. Right?
Yeah.
And so since then, for example, there's a muzzle law out there that says that if a doctor is promoting an idea that the Attorney General, who of course is a great medical expert, what medical school did she go to, right? And decides that it's not medically true, well, they can just fine that person, fine the doctor. Or fine them or sue them. And normally that sort of thing went through the state's medical practice board. Oh no, now it's the Attorney General. And it's all aimed at these crisis pregnancy centers, and the people who run the abortion clinics are just, oh no, we've got to shut them up somehow. So they're empowering these laws that basically kind of make it easier for them to do that. So doctors are being potentially just being muzzled, and if they're saying anything about, oh, maybe masks aren't such a great idea, maybe the COVID shot is not such a great idea, and the state says, oh, well, yes, they are, then the Attorney General can just jump right in there. That's if this law passes. So there's a real problem with that. But in the whole backing around to bodily autonomy, since we passed that, we have organizations saying people who have transitioned and are maybe sort of rethinking that, maybe we should support them in some way. Bodily autonomy. It's my body, and if I want to detransition, I should be able to.
Sure.
And yet the state government is pushing back with that with everything possible. Where's the bodily autonomy in that? And how about the abortion pills? There are pills that you can take that stop the first stage of the abortion pill. And yet we have doctors coming on to committee meetings saying, oh, that's just a scam. When I was talking to Mary Beerworth today of Right to Life, it is not a scam. It works. A woman who has said, gee, I just took the first pill. I'm really having second thoughts about that. I think I'd like to stop this abortion pill because it's a two-step thing. And if you take it the first pill, you can still interrupt the abortion with another medicine. And they're pushing back against that. Shouldn't that be bodily autonomy?
Well, it just reminds me, Guy, of the exact situation that we were dealing with the D-transistors.
Right.
It's the same exact thing. And
Exactly.
I guess I don't understand like why they're so quick to try to snuff out the conversation. What is so dangerous about doctors talking about that? Just because you don't like the fact that it doesn't align? You know, I see this. Often. Yeah, I mean, that's what it comes down to. Guy just went like, Guy, do it again so people could see. I had the camera myself. But it's
the
about
universal signal.
Yeah.
You know, and where the money comes in here, among other things, is, for example, Planned Parenthood. And you've got to remember, the Speaker of the Vermont House is the former executive vice president and lobbyist for Planned Parenthood. Okay? So just always bear that in mind.
Yeah.
The largest abortion provider, that would be Planned Parenthood, and the largest provider of transgender services and counseling is Planned Parenthood.
So
and that's money.
It's all about the industry.
And Big Pharma.
It's about the industry and Big Pharma. I just think it's interesting though that you're talking about life-changing decisions and them not leaving back doors in case you do want to back out of the situation.
Indeed.
This is bodily autonomy. That is medical freedom.
Right.
I don't understand where they're coming from. Obviously, you know, it's like everything else. There's a financial incentive. But I do want to add a couple comments quickly.
Love it.
Judy Daranovich writes, done, no charge. So looks like you're going to be able to maybe show up off a hat sometimes.
P.O. Box 1547, Montpelier, Vermont, 05601. Or whatever.
Yeah.
Love it. Thank you, Judy.
That's going to be sweet.
Great.
Ben Charrett replied. He said to your question, to folks who are maybe just not hearing this yet or tuning in, Ben said, you know, we need some reform in the healthcare industry, and Guy wanted to know what specifically. And Ben writes, more control on big pharmaceutical companies to make doctors and more patient-focused. Instead of willing pills to use, they get a kickback from pharmaceutical companies.
Right.
That is pretty common practice. You know, doctors will push for prescriptions of medications, medical devices, procedures. It could be a whole handful of things, simply because, again, there's an industry that's based off of the same it's kind of very similar actually to what we were just talking about.
So the seduction of money into the profession may be changing how they do their work. A similar, I'm sorry, Paul, I'm going to make a real tangent shift, but boy, is there a
That's
connection.
fine. No, we're time to keep moving.
So the House just passed a bill, H244, that would require the state of Vermont to spend its advertising money, it would eventually require the state of Vermont to spend its 70% of its advertising money on Vermont media, which part of me says, the publisher part of me says, woohoo,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
We can use all the advertising we can get. The other part of me says, well, wait a minute. If more of our budget is coming from state advertising, at what point does the state become influential and maybe have expectations about how we do our work? No government shekels without government shackles.
Well, of course. You know, it's Kitty Trigger writes, kickback or bribe, question mark. And that's kind of a good way to think of it. Like, is it a blackmail even? I mean, not blackmail, that's not the same, but extortion perhaps, you know?
Well, it's some encouragement of the financial persuasion.
Yeah. I think it's definitely, I think it's fine that they want to do that, you know, great. But we're going to put it out there to everybody that we're never going to become overly, I mean, I don't know if you're planning, if you plan to take advertising, fine, but we'll never be overly in bed with them. That's the reality.
And that is just a choice that has to be made where no matter where your money comes from, you have to be able to tell them, sorry, no one tells me what to put in my paper. And that's just how you have to roll.
When you're making that investment into us, and I think everybody out there that watches us would probably agree, I hope they agree, that when you're investing in us, it's because you believe in our ability and you have faith and trust in what we're doing.
Right.
You know that we're going into that building to really just tell the truth of what we're seeing, what we see happen. And I got to say to you guys, I look at a lot of folks in that building who are there for whatever reason it might be. Maybe they're a lobbyist, maybe they're a different news organization, whatever it is. And I feel so thankful, and I just want to put this out there, I'm so thankful to work for you and our advertisers and the people that do fund us, because that's what makes it possible for us to go in there and do that. I know that when I walk into that building, I know that nobody owns my right to say things that need to be said and write stories that need to be written. And really that is truly due to the advertisers that you see here on the screen,
Right.
and the folks and really the subscribers. I mean, to have people give, $9 a month, right? It's $9.
How do they do that, Paul? By
Yeah,
the way?
why don't we talk about that?
Sure.
Well, if you're not currently already a sustaining subscriber of Vermont Daily Chronicle, you absolutely should be. It's $9 a month. That's $108 a year, just to support free speech in this state. And you know that we're going to be in the State House pretty much every day of the session, and we're going to be there, and we're going to be covering those situations where they are trying to suppress your free speech. For example, like what happened. We won't get into that, but basically, we're going to be there.
Right.
We're going to be there as your eyes and ears and voice to let your legislators know what's going on, and what the people really want, and let you know. It's a kind of a give and take in that sense. So it's $9 a month. That's all it is, just to support
I had
free
a
speech.
person who believes in medical freedom today give me a sustaining subscription. And I said, wow, thank you very much. That's very generous of you. And he said, look, you're doing the real work here. And you make it, you give us hope that our message can get out.
That's right.
So yeah, it's a collaboration, really.
It is a collaboration. I think it's so funny. Like if we were having a conversation at a round table the other day at lunch, and I believe Aaron Clark was with us, and he said, it is really kind of strange, when you get up close and personal and you see how a lot of this stuff is done. Like, it's really not that exciting, but then the way that you take it and you tell it is what gives it the life, And we hope that you get our stories, our information, and you're not just like, oh, here these guys are again. We hope that you're excited to see what we have to say and what we're talking about, because it can be a lot of heavy lifting.
Right.
And I know for a fact I've had an increase in communications of all kinds lately, story ideas, and people want us to cover certain things, and man, do I wish I could cover it all, but we just can't. So definitely keep that in mind, but we hope to have your support.
Is now a good time to mention our growth area?
Our growth area? You mean up in Burlington?
Yeah.
I think we should talk about it.
Sure.
Why not?
So we are probably 1 or 2 days away from officially hiring a managing editor of the Burlington Daily News. Someone who every day will be publishing the news coming out of the Queen City, out of the biggest city in Vermont, and really the city where a lot of the change, for good or for bad, in Vermont comes out of Burlington. And this young man is a Burlington native, Burlington High School graduate, went to a Burlington college, and is someone with a lot of experience in journalism and in writing. And I think for those of you who care about Burlington news, you're going to see a huge upgrade in what the Burlington Daily News offers. So I'm really psyched about that. Now's probably not a bad time, Paul, for another commercial.
Sure. Okay, folks, today's episode is also brought to you by Ranmar Corporation. Ranmar Corporation has been serving Central Vermont and surrounding areas with excavation, construction, and real estate services since 1979. They're a local, family-owned company committed to the values of Vermont. Contact us today, contact Randmar Corporation today for all of your contracting and real estate needs. Randmar Corporation. And we of course, thank our sponsors. Once again, guys, I can't say it enough how cool it is to have sponsors, to have people out there watching us live. You know, man, we got a good little audience here today, Guy, and you love to see that because you know this is one of the biggest audiences we've had in the last few weeks. Yeah,
Oh, super.
Just so y'all know, and it's shocking to me because I would say arguably this is the least out of the last month or even 2 months since the beginning of session. Not the least interesting, but it's not like we have this.
There's no big holy cow news.
Yeah, we're not
holy
on Fox.
cow.
Yeah, it's not like we're on Fox or whatever every week. You know, we just have stuff to talk about in the State House.
Is it possible that our promo for all this was tax pain, feeling your tax pain? Are people focusing on that, do you think, I
Well,
wonder?
you know what? I think people are. So I think we should definitely get into that.
Right.
We have about 20 minutes left in our show here, folks, for those that are keeping track.
Sure.
So let's get into the tax
So
conversation.
there's a new sheriff in town when it comes to tax policy in Vermont, and it's called Americans for Prosperity. And this is a national organization, but they now have people working in Vermont, in the State House. They're looking, by the way, to build out volunteers to get the word out. So Americans for Prosperity. And they released some big news at a press conference on Tuesday. They worked the numbers, and they said that the average Vermont family, if the Trump tax cuts are not extended, and they expire at the end of this year, they've been there since 2017, they expire at the end of this year, the average family will be paying an extra $2,000 in federal taxes. And 1,300 or 1,400 of that is in actual straight income tax. The rest of it is sort of related. And businesses will be paying another, I want to say about $1,000. I don't have the number in front of me, about an extra $1,000 a year. And so what's just bizarre to me is our congressional delegation. You have Becca Balint saying, oh, they're just helping out the oligarchs and the billionaires. Well, I'm no billionaire, but $2,000 in my pocket of taxes that I don't have to pay? Hey, Becca, I'm all over that, okay? Please vote to extend these tax cuts. I don't care put your own name on it. Call them the Welch, Sanders, Balint tax break for the middle class if you want, okay? But I would really like to see those tax cuts extended very much.
Well, it is an interesting point, Guy, because they constantly are saying things like Trump's tax cuts are only going to affect the billionaires. You know, it's never the millionaires, by the way. It's only the billionaires.
Yeah.
It's always funny, right? You know, and on that, it does really blow me away to watch our delegation, especially, you know, Bernie Sanders is like worldwide famous. Mm-hmm. You know, I think people know him all over the globe for kind of being like a bit of a socialist in the United States. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's inspiring to some of our detractors and enemies around the world. But it does blow me away how unwilling they are to take a look at some of this. Or just like they call Trump authoritarian and all this crazy stuff that he's doing. But they refuse to think about or talk about any of the stuff that happened over the last 4 years when it comes to authoritarianism, you know, and suppression of freedom of speech and ideas. And I'm not even necessarily arguing that some of their concerns aren't valid, because I think some of their concerns are valid no matter who the president is. You always want to have a level of you know, surveillance on what they're up to, right? And you don't want them to just be doing horrible things. But it does kind of blow me away just how much they just don't look at themselves and say, well, do we have any oligarchs within our own party? Do we have any authoritarians or really rich billionaires who have been funding us? And maybe some of them aren't even from the United States actually too, you know,
yeah.
for example, George Soros, right? Like, why is that never talked about, right?
You know, maybe it's as simple as whose door is getting busted down?
Yeah.
In the Biden administration, whose door was getting busted down? Well, it was the pro-life father of 8 children who had been protesting and had some sort of encounter with some guy on the sidewalk. He had the SWAT team bust down his door and drag him out of there in front of his family. The Trump administration, it's Trendy Aragua and MS-13 whose doors get broken down. Given the choice, I'm just as happy that they're breaking down the international gangsters' doors.
Yeah, no, I think it is interesting, but they don't want to look at the infringements on one side just because they only want to see theirs. Mm-hmm. And I see that in many different spaces on the left right now. But I think this is maybe an interesting time, Guy, to bring up our experience just a few minutes ago. I think just to kind of segue, I know we want more tax stuff to talk about, but earlier today when we were getting ready for the show, here Guy and I are just kind of like talking it out, you know, and I'm kind of tuned out, and some gentleman just walks into the studio, and I thought he was with Guy, and he had a dog with him, and he started chatting with Guy and just letting him know, and he says, "Oh, I'm old guy," and he was probably, he said he was 70 something.
In the 70s.
Yeah, and he said, I've not ever been engaged in politics my whole life, but I'm here and I'm with the organization Indivisible, and of course my ears are like, Indivisible? What are you talking about? And he's talking about this protest that's happening. Where is it, Guy?
I think it's Saturday at the State House.
Saturday,
April 5th, a week from Saturday.
Okay, so not that we're well, go ahead, go express your First Amendment right? But I mean, we don't. That's not really our event, but it's just interesting because, you know, you're seeing now like.
But I hope our people, quote unquote, our people, the people who agree with, will not go there with bullhorns.
No.
And shout down and drown things out, because we believe in free speech. We think that's a really good thing.
That's right, and that's just not our stance. You know, we don't have the fascist take to silence voices that we don't like. That's not how I operate, and that's not how Guy operates either. So definitely, hey, I'm all about free speech. Go crazy with it next week if you want. But I thought that was kind of an interesting thing that happened to us.
Although fair is fair, on April 10th, Mary Holland, who's the president of the Children's Defense League,
Health Defense,
Children's Health Defense, will be speaking at the State House at from 1 to 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I think that's a Wednesday.
It's the 10th, so yes, it is a Wednesday.
Okay.
I think it is. We'll double check that.
Yeah. Anyway, it's in the Chronicle today. So that's kind of interesting that this is the organization that RFK Jr. started, and the person who's running it now will be up here and talking a lot about the vax freedom laws, the one that you raised at the beginning of the show.
That's right. Yeah. No, there's a whole lot going on right now, and I think we're seeing this. I think we're seeing a beautiful thing happen right now in the Vermont State House, Guy. And I know some people out there might be like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah, what are you talking about?
I think you're starting to see a reemergence of a real conservative opposition, and people that are paying attention. I think for a long time, I think conservatives lacked the ability to muster any type of opposition simply because they lacked the knowledge and understanding of what was happening in the building. You know, I think, and I don't mean Robert's rules. I mean, what are they actually trying to do?
Paul, do you think it's conservatives, or do you think it's centrists?
Actually, I think it's centrists. That's a good point. I mean, good point. Conservatives know exactly and have known exactly what's going on. You're right. It's the people that are kind of on the periphery, maybe lean a little bit more to the right, but don't really want to express their opinion. You're right. Those are the ones that are starting to say, wait a minute, what is my money being used for? Mm-hmm. Right? And I think more and more you're finding, especially with my generation too, like they're pretty conservative. I think the younger down you go for I mean, I could be wrong there, but there's a point made. You have to look at the colleges. This might be a different story, but there's a lot of young people in Vermont that have conservative values. So
your friend Caleb,
my friend Caleb,
who we started us up with the show here, was our engineer, and there's a really hard-working young man working his way up in the electrician in the trades. And gosh, you'd like to buy a house.
That's right. Yeah.
would you.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm seeing, I'm starting to see the fruits of my labor, if you will, and I think that the conversation last year, let's just say a year ago now, I think it's about a year since we've started. I think it's not quite yet. We'll
Yeah, when is our anniversary?
it's mid-April. I believe it's April 10th.
Are we gonna have a party and a cake?
Yeah, we might
no
have
cake. No cake.
No, we might have to do something, but
Yeah.
But to think back to one of our first conversations on our show was talking about the potential of home ownership for me someday and how that's a concern. And I remember interviewing John Rogers. This was before he was lieutenant governor. Same conversation, and I don't feel nearly as in despair as I did about a year ago. And I think that there's a lot of young folks around Vermont that feel similarly. There's still problems. It's still really expensive. But I made this post on X the other day, and it was just basically me saying, I keep seeing comments, and there's a comment somebody wrote to me, like, I can't take this anymore, I'm out of here, blah, 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 blah. And I wrote over the top of it in a quote tweet and said, I'm really tired of seeing comments like these, because I think if you actually were paying attention to the fact that Republicans won all these seats back and we're only 3 seats away from a majority in the Senate, arguably 2, depending on the vote. So, look, Republicans are in a pretty incredible position to take majority in the Senate, in my opinion. And I think that's going to happen in 2026. And I think that you're going to continue to see that. The House is maybe another story, but at least Republicans
Or maybe not.
Or maybe not. Exactly.
And the other thing going on in the House, Paul, that a lot of people are not seeing, it's sort of underneath the surface, is that in the House, there are centrist blue dog Democrats who are starting to say, like the voters you were just talking about, are starting to say, now wait a minute, to a lot of the housing, education, tax policies, and they're like you. They want to, they want to have a house.
I've heard rumors of something. I can't say any names, and I won't say any names, but I've heard rumors that there's a group of people that are starting to vote a little bit differently in the Democratic Party.
Who knows?
So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I definitely think that there's some opposition to some of the craziness, and I think, I do think it's important that we mention this, because I've been telling a lot of people this. Despite what you might see in some of our headlines, and really others too, the State House has been a nice place to be this year. I've enjoyed it more. I don't feel. I mean, Guy. I mean, I know that. I know. But
with
I
a
mean,
couple exceptions.
with a couple exceptions. But still, I mean, look, you probably discovered through that there was a lot of people that actually supported you that you didn't know that they did.
Yes.
And I know I have, right? So I can only imagine it's been the same for you. So it's been a much better place to be. I enjoy being there. It's exciting to go in. Whereas last year and maybe years prior, I felt a little bit scared, which could be the fact that I had just started. But then also, just these people are kind of mean. So we do have some comments. Let's see here. I want to make sure. Yeah, okay. So let's see. Kitty Trigger writes, "Billionaires fund both sides." Yeah, that's arguably that's definitely true. Thursday, Judy is right. 4/10 is a Thursday, so when Mary Holland is here is a Thursday. Craig Mahoros writes, "How much money is Vermont spending on all the video ads on YouTube, and whose brother-in-law production company is getting this money? Vaping ads and the lack of childcare ads?" I don't know the answer.
Oh, the child care. That's Let's Grow Kids.
That's not the state. Well,
they're an advocacy group funded by another big billionaire. I don't think it's Bezos's ex-wife, but it's someone like that, and has poured a ton of money into Let's Grow Kids, which has been behind all of the child care advertising.
yeah, and they are definitely a big one.
Speaking of Amazon, by the way, looks like Amazon might be building a big resource center in Essex Junction.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Big pushback for it, of course.
Yeah, well, of course. And along those lines, the tariffs, April 2nd is Liberation Day, or whatever they call it. But the day that the tariffs hit. And so I asked the Secretary of Commerce, more or less, Economic Development for Vermont, Lindsay Curley, said, look, there are these states that are having huge factories promised to be built because of the tariffs. Like Honda wants to build something in New Mexico and Arizona and all that. Vermont getting any of that action? I asked her. And she said, well, nothing official, but talks are happening. There is action, there's stuff going on where some companies, in order to not be subject to tariffs, have their industry subject to tariffs, are kind of kicking around the idea of little old Vermont as a place to land a big factory.
Hey, well, think of it like this, and I know we've joked about it, and I know Trump talks about it all the time. Canada joining the U.S., people are very opposed to that. Fine. But hey, Messina, New York, Whitehall, New York, Burlington.
Yeah.
I'm just naming some towns that used to be. I mean, Burlington is still a busy town, don't get me wrong, but it's not a town of necessarily industry and businesses and bustling economy. And those towns used to be. They used to absolutely be. So just throwing that out there as a point. I'm not necessarily saying, I know people don't like it when I talk about Canada like that, but there's something to be said where like this isolation factor, the border being there, and then that's just it. That's the end of the video game, right? That's the video game map's over. You can't go any further. You haven't unlocked that part. Well, that's kind of the joke, right? That's the GTA guys.
For your generation,
yeah. Well,
anyway.
But the point is,
I have no idea what he's talking about.
you know what I mean, right, Tim? the end of the map. But
Okay.
the point is like, why does that have to be that way? Would Vermont benefit from it not being like that? So, I think there's some questions there. But we are getting close on time here, Guy, and I know there's a clip that we want to discuss.
Oh, yes.
And I think we ought to get to it.
By all means.
And try to.
Okay, and this goes to the whole tax thing that we were just talking about, our tax paying. And the state of Vermont deciding who should pay taxes and who shouldn't. And Austin Davis, who's the head of the advocacy leader for the Vermont Chamber.
Champlain, or is it the whole chamber?
It's the Lake. You're right. Thank you.
Sorry,
the Lake Champlain Chamber. I do not want to make that mistake. Was testifying before the Ways and Means, the Tax Committee of the House, and was saying, look, the state of Vermont should not be picking the winners and the losers. Who has to pay all the taxes and who doesn't? Who has to carry the bricks and who gets a free ride? And well, he got some pushback from the Barrie representative, Teddy, I can never pronounce his last name.
Wasasak.
Okay, thank you.
Teddy Wasasak. So here they are in the House Ways and Means Committee.
Yes.
I feel very strongly about this. I feel the need to say this. The market picks winners and losers. It is the job of the government and tax code to right size that. So yes, we are picking winners and losers because the market is already starting that dynamic for us, and it's our job to make sure the right people are winning.
I think that there's a place for government in, playing referee and mitigating factors that are in the market. I don't think that it's appropriate to be picking winners and losers, targeting specific classes of payers based off of likes and dislikes. I think that's a dangerous and slippery slope.
Amen to that. It's a nice thought to say, well, as we spoke with Teddy yesterday, and he said, well, when you have billionaires who are making billions, obviously, because that's why they're billionaires, and aren't paying their fair share of taxes, it's up to government to straighten that out. The problem is that they don't always do such a great job of it, and they end up being very self-interested themselves, starting their own programs, and frankly, the non-billionaires, that's us, end up paying a ton more, especially if you're in the middle class. And Paul, I'm sorry I didn't ask you to excerpt this other clip, but there was a memorable clip from a video from a House Human Services meeting yesterday, where for 2 hours, people who are supporting new legislation that would spend a lot more money would put forth their bill ideas. For example, let's have food stamps be used for homeless people going to restaurants, so they could use their food stamps in restaurants. And the kids who are going through foster care program, there's some money set aside for them, and they get a lump sum when they're 18 or they're 21, and they get to spend it any way they want, and maybe we should invest that for them. And all of which are, you know, kind of nice. And the people who are putting these ideas forward are people who work in human services, who want to help people, who know that money is part of that. So, but there are all these ideas. Some had some merit. Some you go, oh, you got to be kidding. But Brenda Steady is a representative from Milton, one of the new ones, a new Republican from Milton. And this long 2 or 3 hour meeting, she says like almost nothing. And she's just sitting there like, in the last minute of this long, long session, she said, who's going to pay for all this? Why are we sticking it to the middle class? And comments like that in that setting were actually technically a little bit out of order, and the chairman reminded her that you don't do that in the setting that they were in. But it was just one of these I've got to say this moments. And it's a really good question. Is all these wonderful ideas, yeah, and we're the camel, we're the loaded down camel here in the middle class.
Yeah. Well, with that, Guy, we should go to our final ad. Today's episode is also brought to you by One Day in July Investment Management. As financial advisors, excuse me, guys. As financial advisors, it's Friday, guys. I'm getting there. All right.
Okay.
One Day in July provides personalized investment management and financial advice to individuals, families, and institutions. They work with clients to understand their financial goals to build investment solutions. They are fiduciaries on all accounts for all clients. And we want to say thank you to One Day in July. And with that, I'm going to go back to Guy, who is wearing a new hat. What is going on?
Recognize this hat, Paul.
I do recognize that hat.
Well, so this is, of course, when we went shooting at Paros last week, right?
Yeah.
And my gosh, I got a text a few hours after your video aired, the one of me popping off with an AR-15 and an MP5. But it was the AR-15 that got this family member's attention, who said, Guy, you're shooting that assault rifle. I didn't correct her, okay, Paul? I didn't correct her. You're shooting this assault rifle, and there are all these crazy J6ers who read your chronicle, and this is terrible.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, you know, obviously I had triggered her, I guess you might say. And
Triggered.
I said, you know, we're just having fun.
Yeah.
We're just shooting. But the idea, the picture of I guess maybe, I don't know, a white male or something, shooting an AR-15, to some people, they've been taught this is scary, this is bad, this is dangerous. Well, actually, the dangerous stuff is the 16-year-old kids who were arrested in Montpelier, who are from Springfield, Massachusetts, were found with drugs and guns. That's the gun danger in Vermont. It's the teenage triggermen who are sent here by out-of-state gangs to whack people who don't pay their drug debts. And there's a fair amount of that going on.
Yeah, and that's to say, you know, that's why we deserve our Second Amendment right.
Yeah.
You know, and we're allowed to talk about that too, and be open about the fact that this is happening in our state. We should be allowed to talk about that.
We have a First Amendment to protect our Second Amendment.
Yeah, exactly. We don't live in England where you're not allowed to own a weapon and you're not allowed to talk about the people that are stabbing people. And to make a point,
Right.
my brother, who does live in England, so I have some skin in this game,
Mm-hmm.
has talked to me a little bit about this, but he said to me, he's been over there for a few weeks now. There's no guns there, of course, and he's like, he goes, man, you guys were really doing the whole conservative hardo thing, shooting up the guns. And I said, oh yeah, we did, buddy. Oh yeah, we both had a really good laugh about it. But then my brother, who is a military man, I sent him a video of me shooting the automatic.
Well, let me guess. He corrected you.
No.
Oh,
I
good.
sent him a video of me shooting the automatic MP5, and he wrote back, dude, that is awesome. I haven't even done that. Oh man, that is so cool. So,
Neat.
so there you go.
Neat.
But with
Okay.
that, I think that's a good place to wrap up, Guy.
I
What
think
do you
that
think?
is, and thank you again to Perro's Gun Shop. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
Folks, go on down to Perro's. They have their range, they got incredible selection of guns and ammo and accessories down there on Route 2 in Waterbury. So anyway, yeah, another great show. Really enjoyed the switchback. Thank you very much. And we will see you again next Friday at 4.
It's another week in the can.
This can.